In this episode, we give you some insight into how this podcast, this YouTube channel is going. So you can actually see us optimizing this thing as we go. And we also go into the mind of Sam to find out how he's learning how to become a better storyteller at the moment as well. We also covered a little bit about when optimization goes wrong, and in particular, how to fail at calendar etiquette. And then we covered a little bit about me, nice vulnerable bit about me and how I'm currently working through learning how to be a better delegator in order to improve the internal processes in my business as well. And we kind of end on talking a little bit about the Bible, aka the 4-hour work week, and our whys. What do you think the episode was about, Sam?
I think in this episode, you're going to take the passenger seat as Vicky is driving her business into a more optimized way of existing. And we're going to get to see real time the twists and the turns of the journey so that you can implement them, so that we can implement them and learn from them. And most of all, we're going to find out why she wants to optimize her business.
So here we are. We're on episode number 5, which is quite exciting, which means we're halfway through our test, our plan. We wanted to get to 10 episodes before we decided what to do with this little podcast, didn't we?
Yeah. I think it's going well. 50% of the way there, turning up, being consistent. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Is just getting started, just doing the thing.
Yeah, well, 100%. I've been living in my own head about getting back on YouTube for a year. And I tried to trick myself out of it and say to people publicly, I'm going to launch a YouTube channel. I'm going to go back on YouTube. And I actually dealt with the shame of people coming up to me and saying, where's that thing? I'm like, yeah, I haven't done it yet. And after a while, that got easier to put up with saying I was going to do it. So I'm really happy that we're halfway through this little test.
Me too. 2019, when COVID kicked off, I went, this is great. At the time, I was having to commute loads and I was driving around everywhere. And I'm thinking, I'm going to put that time into building a personal brand. And I'm just going to do content for an hour every day. It'll be brilliant. And 2022, not even 2020, 2 years later, starting to do that. It's funny. It's funny how we don't do what we know we need to do.
I wonder why that is. I think I needed the accountability of someone else, which is why this has been perfect. Because having you pop up in my DMs going, right, what's going on, has been useful because I would find a reason not to rock up and record an episode on my own, which is why I have run a podcast series out before where I talked about website and website marketing. I got to nearly 50 episodes, but it would just be a schlep by the end of having to turn up on my own, sit on my own, talk into a microphone on my own, have to do it at after hours. It's quite boring and lonely, and then edit it and then get it live. And I was finding ways to cut corners towards the end.
Do you know, it's funny you say that because that's why this is working for me, because you're doing it. You've done a lot of the back end, put it all together. We've hired an editor, and we said we were going to kick off the episode by reviewing what's worked and what wasn't. And I was telling you, I have a couple of friends who are very senior engineers in other organizations, and over a beer, I was saying, so go on, guys, tell me straight, what do you think of the podcast? You've listened to it. And those two guys, I'd previously said, we should do a podcast on engineering, automation, and optimization because, that's what we're all specialized in. And I had to do all the doing and corralling them and whatever else, and it didn't work. So I think that's why this has worked. But they actually kind of took the piss a bit because, they're mates over a beer and they get it. And they were going, if this was really a podcast about optimization, you would only ever have to do one episode. It would be the most optimized episode ever. Of all the stuff, and you'd be done. They went, if you're recording every week, that doesn't sound very optimized. So anyway, I told them where to go and asked them to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Well, no, but the thing is, there's so much to talk about with regards to optimization. Things always need to come back and be continually revised in a business. You don't just build something and then walk away and go, job well done. But it's great feedback, nevertheless.
Do we want to share with anyone that's listening the stats? So we're recording this on the 23rd of September, 2022. We've got one episode live at the moment. This is recording number 5, so that means we've got 3 in the backlog. This will be number 4. On YouTube, I've got 82 views. That's good. I can say one of them's, a few of them are a couple of my overseas team because I asked them to do some work for some stuff. We've got 37 subscribers, so what's that conversion rate? That's 80 odd views to 37, so about 50% subscribe on YouTube. Don't know if that means anything. Do you have any of the total watch time? Are people just going on it, or are they actually watching it?
Watch time is 6.3 hours. 6.3 hours. So out there in the world, we've been watched 6 hours worth. So about, which is, it's fine. It's fine. Like, because it's such a long episode, we wouldn't expect people to watch all the way through. But
I think that is, for anyone thinking about content as part of their business strategy, this illustrates, even at this early stage, we put in about an hour, maybe a bit more to get going, but about an hour's effort into that podcast episode. And we've got, okay, so there's two of us, so it was 2 hours, but we've got a 3 times return on our investment there of, in that people have listened to that.
Yes. And to get live, we had an agreement, didn't we? Which was, okay, let's just rock up and record, rough idea of what we're going to talk about. No matter what, let's just get it live. So I created a very simple ident in Canva using free music. I edited the first episode because that's one of the strings in my bow, but I don't want to edit the whole series. And then we just threw it up online and just told quite a few people. But actually, half of the impressions, I think, and the kind of views are coming from YouTube recommending this channel to other people as well. Yeah, so it just goes to show that you've just got to get started and you just got to fling something online to get up and running. For me, though, what's been really great over the past few episodes is just learning how to become better at articulating my ideas again in this format, because I am known for meandering a little bit and and as I bring my thoughts to the front of my mind and everything, and I'm becoming a bit more hyper aware of that. I'm also, as I'm watching the edits back, thinking, what would I want to hear? Like, what would be really entertaining for me? What would be really useful? And optimizing my plan for what I'm going to talk about every episode as we go through. So, this episode format is very different from the first couple of episodes, right? And by the time we get to episode 10, I think we would have tightened the knobs and been able to find something that really works just for us and based on what the people who are watching it find useful and entertaining and interesting as well.
Yeah, for sure. I've listened back and thought, Jesus, Vicky was saying some great stuff and you didn't ask any questions about it. So that's going to be really good. Another bit of data very quickly before we round up on this, review of how's it gone so far. We've also got our first 5-star review on Spotify. I don't know if you've seen that from a chat.
I'm so bad at looking at that stuff.
No, I only know because I left it. So that's a prompt to anyone listening that wants to hear more and wants to see this succeed. Please, on whatever platform you're on, please give us a review. Please give us some feedback as well, because we want this to be useful. Otherwise, what's the point? We're not just doing this for self-improvement and for our own benefit. We'd actually like to help. We'd like to at least hope that the audio is helpful to someone. So please do get in touch, ask us your questions, and we will take it on board. If you're really horrible, we'll probably just ignore you and slag you off behind your back. But if you say something constructive, we will take it on board and put it in.
Let's pull something out of that to talk about, because I love how you DM me all the books and stuff that you're reading at the moment. Like, I don't have books and books that I haven't read yet on my shelf, on my Kindle, in my audiobook player. But it's quite a nice kind of link and segue from what we were just talking about in terms of how to be better at storytelling, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I've been listening to the audiobook by Matthew Dix. Let's give him a shout out. Storyworthy. Now, I've had this book recommended to me, I don't know how many times. The little pitch on the front is engage, teach, persuade, and change your life through the power of storytelling. I think, honestly, the title put me off because I went, no, I just want to talk in facts and figures and real implement, want to put stuff in. There's no number in the title. Quantify it for me, please.
Where's the KPI?
Yeah, exactly. As you would hope, a gripping book because the guy is a specialist storyteller. In fact, a competitive storyteller. And who knew that was a thing? I want
Is
to be a
it?
competitor. Yeah, it is. And it's awesome. Like, they tell stories for 7 minutes. American audience will get this, The Moth. And there's a Moth Grand Slam, and it sounds great. Anyway, a couple of things that I have pulled from the book. Process, because I'm a process guy. Every story is about a 5-second moment, a 5-second emotion. Your child being born. It's about the 5 seconds where you see them and look into their eyes for the first time. That's the thing. And so all copywriting, this is what I've learned, is anyone that's into copywriting and formulas around copy knows that these frameworks in place. But I think the thing that's missing from my perspective, as I would consider myself an outsider of copywriting, is that you have to identify the emotion you are trying to articulate first, before you get started with any copywriting formula. So, child being born, the emotion is elation, happiness, joy, looking into their eyes. The place to start your story is with the opposite emotion. So you want to articulate the emotion of a lack of joy, emptiness. And you also want to start your story with motion. So in a car, on a plane, walking, and you want to start as close to the emotion happening as possible. So there are a couple of things that happen, and then there's narrative arc and all these kinds of interesting things. Anyway, the feedback I will give is that I thought I'm going to test this because I'm running a little Twitter experiment at the moment, trying to get 50,000 followers in 90 days. Very difficult. And I tested this formula out. I thought, I'm going to do this in tweet form. Let me pull up the tweet and I'll tell you what it looked like.
So while you're pulling that up, are you talking basically about like what's known as the hero's quest, right? Everything's lovely, and then you disrupt the equilibrium, and then it's when you disrupt the equilibrium that you take people on a journey and it gets resolved and everything's happily ever after.
Well, I wouldn't pretend to have a Scooby-Doo about whether it's the hero's quest or not, to be honest. Maybe. Because what I've noted is that quite often these stories don't end happily ever after. And what you're trying to do is trigger this range of emotions. I think that is a framework.
Yeah, there's a few in the world of stories. Yeah. But this is interesting. So what tweet did you write?
The tweet started off. Now this is a bit different. One of the pieces of advice in this book is you don't want to deliver the punchline first. That ruins the joke. But typically when people are, like I have done, talking about this, I've gone, this story thing's great because it got me this massive result. And I've told you straight away, that's not a very enticing. So I read this book with the intention of being better on the podcast. And I tested it out with a tweet. I thought, well, if I can write it out, I can think about it, I can start to think better, and I'll hopefully be able to start to talk a bit better with proper English and everything. This tweet, I started out with the punchline, which is wrong, but it's Twitter, so you've got to. Employment is awesome. Here are 7 reasons you should have quit yesterday. So that's really a hook more than anything. Just a way of people self-identifying a couple of emotions. Quit is deliberately strong. And then this is how I open the tweet. Pacing back and forth, heart rate through the roof, palms are sweating. I've got sick all down my back and there are tears in everyone's eyes. And it's Twitter, so it goes into a thread. Now, start with pacing back and forth. There's motion. Heart rate through the roof. Palms are sweating, so I'm creating the curiosity thing, like what the hell are you on about? And I've got sick all down my back. Now that's quite graphic as well. Another thing that he articulates is that if you're trying to tell a good story and bring someone in, you want to tell it in present tense. So you want to talk about doing it there and then. The use of tense is quite useful. So all I wanted to say really, I guess, was that I'm trying to get better to be able to better communicate the information that has been learned about running businesses more efficiently, optimizing processes and everything else. And I recognize that story is a fantastic way to convey that. And that is the book that I've found most useful. And I've actually emailed the guy and said, please can I come to America and do one of your courses, because I'm sold on this as being the way to communicate. And hopefully that'll give me a story to talk about.
So, but question for you, right? Do you think the use of story sometimes is a bit overused with business owners? Like the thing that comes to mind immediately as soon as you were saying that was the crying CEO. Do you remember him from over the summer?
Yeah.
That guy, he's the CEO of Hypersocial, and he became a total meme because I think it was the picture he posted. I think that's what triggered everyone, because it was a picture of him crying, right? And then he did this proper LinkedIn story post, which was all about him letting go of people on his team and how it made him feel, and the fact it was vulnerable, and it was a real story, and everyone was just like, what about the team members, right?
Yeah. It's not, the story's not about him. You're the CEO, mate. It's your job.
Yeah. So I think using story to convey business ideas should be done with a slice of self-awareness, a dash of self-awareness, right?
For sure. So that's something that comes up in the book, and this is less about business stories or the business of storytelling. He's trying to give frameworks and share these stories just about life. And I would absolutely agree. Like, I hate, like, I don't say that lightly, hate the business posts. It's like, I started off and as a child and I had no arms and legs and lived on the street and never ate any food. And now I'm a successful...
I walked past a homeless guy today.
And it reminded me of when I was nearly homeless and lost everything. And now you can come on my 7-figure program and, live happily ever after.
Yeah. Get in the bin.
So I'm not a religious person particularly. Like, I believe there's a higher order being and, whatever else. But from a system and optimization point of view, there's no denying that story, specifically, the Bible, the Quran, whatever your religious book of choice is, whatever your faith is, that's lasted thousands of years, and it affects people deeply at a moral level. It affects how you live, it affects your actions, and ultimately how you live your life. So if you ever want to understand the power of story, I think, you just have to look at how whole nations and groups of people have, I don't want to say being controlled, but being influenced, let's say, to live in a certain way and to live a certain life based on the power of story, which is why I think if you've got something to say, you have a responsibility to communicate that in a way that is well understood, because no one remembers that you made £1 million in 7 days. People remember the emotion that happened. Like, I didn't get to see my kids for 7 days because I had to work 24 hours. And people resonate with the emotion that you felt and how it relates to them, because everyone's always looking at it and always listening, going, well, what about me? What about me? What about me? Like that's what everyone's thinking. So a story allows a person to be in it themselves, to experience it themselves. And that's, you do the same when you're teaching kids. You teach kids through emotion. You go, well, I touched that and it's going to hurt, or you did a good, I'm doing a terrible job of articulating it. But you tell kids stories to teach them.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing generally, though, about stories and storytelling is that, just to bring it back to what we're talking about generally, is that I find really good writers, the ones that churn out a book a year, right? Those guys are some of the most expert optimization people you'll ever meet, right? Especially if they write all of their scenes out on cards, they've got them on walls, they swap things around, they're connecting characters to characters, story arcs to story arcs, and then they have to come to a conclusion, and it all has to fit neatly into a book. And looking at a kind of a writer's story plan, especially when they're post-it notes on a wall, is a thing of beauty, right? Because it takes you on a journey. You can see the process, the flow, and the outcome, just like when you're looking at your business processes, right?
Yeah, well, talking about how you optimize to tell stories, let's say that you decide that this is a useful thing, as we are just, I think we're concluding it would be useful for the podcast for us to be able to tell stories around situations we've observed so that other people can experience those situations themselves and take the learnings from them. So in this book, Storyworthy by Matthew Dix, really recommend it. He prescribes this homework for life, which has got an ominous title, but he quite openly says, look, no one's going to do something every day for half an hour, an hour, ever, unless they are severely motivated. He says it's just unrealistic. He said, so if you want to get better at storytelling, do this homework for life. It's 5 or 10 minute job, and it's as easy as it gets. 2 columns on a spreadsheet. You could do it in the notes on your phone, I guess. And you write the day's date down, and you write a couple of bullet points of a moment that happened in your day that you could tell as a story. Now, I started doing this immediately.
This sounds like journaling, Sam Jackson.
It does, but let me tell you, so I started it a couple of weeks ago. The first entry here, 3 bullet points. My son, Elliot, woke me up in bed. Video edits, figuring out how to make stories. That's what I wrote down. And I know now I'm there in that moment. I can now tell a story about that. My son came into the room 6:30 in the morning, wanted to play my phone, got some pictures together. He used my video editing app to make a little video montage of like his previous week and everything he'd done. He did it all, and I got to see him learn and figure that out. And I was so proud in that moment. Just that little thing conveyed all these emotions for me straight away. Like, I'm back there lying in bed, a bit tired because he's woken me up in the morning. Like, I can now tell a story about that. And it literally took me all of a minute, that like just before bed. And I started doing this just before bed. Like, what's a story I can pick from today? And I started not doing 2 columns. I'm an overachiever, what can I say? And I'm also going, what's a business story that I can pull from today as well? Because I'm thinking, well, that's the content I want to talk about. Now, this is all great for being storytelling, maybe a bit academic. Let me explain why you want to do this. Kids' lives just disappear like in an instant. They're grown up before you know it. Your own life is moving way quicker than you want it to. The experiences that, and all the things that you want to achieve from life, which is, why we're bothering to optimize. We're not optimizing so you can work harder. We're optimizing so you can have more life, more freedom, more time, whatever it means to you. It all happens too quickly, and it's very difficult to be present. This exercise for me has slowed time down. Everyone is, it's quite a well-known thing to say, be more present, be in the moment. How the hell do you do that? Well, I found that this does that because it makes me take a breath and think about the moment that happened in the day and all the emotions that are around it. And I now have 18 of these moments catalogued. And I've got those last 18 days all there captured in emotions. A lot of them are around family and friends, and they're awesome. And I could tell them all the stories now, and it might never be for anyone else, but I now have this back catalogue of stories. And because I've also been asking myself, what are the business lessons? I actually have a load of content as well that I could talk about and bring up. So anyway, highly recommend it. Hopefully it'll make me a better podcaster as well.
Because we're just going to shift gears, right, and talk about when optimization goes wrong. I know that was something you wanted to talk about. Why do you want to get negative, Sam Jackson? What's your deal? What's your beef? Why
do you want to optimize or like delegate or improve your business? Like, what's the benefit of doing that for you?
Predominantly, it's to just make sure the best use of time is happening in the business. It's not necessarily just about time, as we've spoken about previously. It's about making sure everyone's happy with the tasks that they're doing, making sure there's satisfaction with the tasks that people are doing, leveraging those things really. It's ultimately about how to make more money, right? But it's also how to have a nice life at the same time. So that's why for me.
Yeah, for sure. So that's exactly where my head's at. Is the reason I love these tools is because I think all these manual tasks that I have to do, like the tasks that we hate, bookkeeping, managing your calendar, managing projects, sending links and notifications, email, you can automate all of that, and assuming that that's all worth doing in your business. And so I was dead chuffed to bits with myself because I use Calendly, originally developed by Uber. And for anyone that's not used Calendly, rather than having this email back and forth with someone that wants to meet you, someone that wants to, have some of your time, going, are you free on Tuesday next week? Oh, no, I'm not free until Wednesday. And then you go, okay, how about 5 till 6? Oh, no, I'm only free at 2 till 4. Well, I'm not available How does Friday suit you? None of that happens. It's essentially an online portal. There's actually a free version of it. You can set it up, you can integrate it with your calendar, and you just send someone a link and they can see your calendar. And most people are probably familiar with this if you're booking any activity online. Like, COVID really saw this kind of product take off. But essentially, you can send this link to anyone and they can book in some time in your calendar, and you don't have to have that back and forth. Then there's some nice automation that happens on the back of it where they get an email notification, it automatically goes into your calendar, you get email notifications, everybody's happy, everyone's a winner, because now you just have these meetings. And you can even add in nice little other things where, let's say you do consulting, let's say your time is paid for. People can buy an hour of your time. And you can also set up little Zoom reminders. And do you know what else you can do off the back of it? After someone's had an hour of your time, you can say, hey, really enjoyed that hour of your time. Would you mind leaving a review on my Google reviews page or wherever else? Sounds great. Except for when you have a nice, clever funnel set up, like I had set up for some of my consulting time. And I can't even remember what the guy wanted to chat about or some help with, but I offered my time and said, hey, just go over to my website here, figure out what you need, self-service, if you need some help and some time. So he books himself in for an appointment. Meanwhile, I've gone off on holiday and there's a UK bank holiday and this guy's in America. So I'm not picking up my phone. And my calendar doesn't know that it's a bank holiday Monday. The guy books himself in. And the first thing I know about this is on the Tuesday morning, my optimization, my automations have all gone perfectly well because this guy has got a reminder the day before. He's got a reminder 15 minutes before. He's been sent the Zoom link. He logs in. I'm not there. And then an hour later, he gets an email going, thanks so much for spending an hour with Sam Jacks. Would you mind leaving a Google review? And so on Tuesday morning, I log in, you've got a 1-star Google review. And the guy just says, well, as requested, here's a review. Didn't turn up, wasted it, hung around for 10 minutes.
It broke, right? What you did there was you messed with someone's time, and that's a really big thing in the world of meetings and scheduling. Do you know the etiquette about sharing a Calendly link, actually? Do you know there's a thing about this? It was all over Twitter at the start of the year, right?
No, go on.
You're like this. This guy did a tweet. He says, when someone sends you a Calendly link and asks you to slot yourself on their calendar, they're telling you that you are less important than them and that all of their current meetings are more important than whatever you need them for. And it just sparked off this massive debate about if you just share your Calendly link and say, find a spot in there, that kind of seems like they're dismissing you and your time. So that's one part of the etiquette, social etiquette minefield. And then another is when people don't turn up and things happen. What's the etiquette when someone rocks up 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late? I always have a 15-minute late cut-off time. At 15 minutes I go, right, because I've got other stuff to do. But I was in a business group and they were like, that's generous. I go after 5 minutes. I'm like, that seems a bit harsh after 5 minutes. But it just triggers emotions. And to come back to this thing we were talking about earlier about storytelling, when you bring emotion into it,
oh yeah,
and optimizations go wrong, it doesn't surprise me that you got a 1-star review there.
Oh no, not at all. Good on him. I totally understand. I effed up big time, and the least I could have done was to tell him somehow. So what I'm getting at, I guess, is I think I still maintain it's a really efficient system. I actually think that guy's tweet is right. You're telling everyone else where they are in the pecking order. Well, it's true. Yes, you are less important than everything else I've got going. Not to say you're not important. And if you take that personally, I think it says more about you than them. Personally, that's my opinion. Maybe that offends some people. Well, great. We know where we stand with one another now. But the thing is with that is there was no quality control in place. Now, just to try, I then got in contact the next day. I was like, I am so sorry. Here's what happened. Here's the truth. If I can make it up to you, he didn't pay for the time, so I don't feel terrible. If I can make it up to you, please let me know. Here's my calendar. I will find the time. Let me know when you're free. I've planted a tree in your name because I just feel guilty.
I did everything I could do that.
Yeah. In South Africa, there is now a tree planted in his name. By the way, that's something I usually do for people that are either new customers or whatever else, or I just want to say thank you to. I plant a tree in their name.
That's a nice touch.
Well, for another day, I have this thing about how it's our responsibility to look after the world. And if we're not doing it as part of our daily actions, then... And the guy never got back to me, which fair enough. He's just ignored me now.
What's gone wrong here in the optimization process is that the human element was kind of missed out, right? So where your optimization went wrong was you forgot to update your automation, basically. Or the automation wasn't set to...
I didn't block my Monday out.
Right, you didn't block your Monday out, or the tool wasn't set to... monitor for extra calendars that have got bank holidays in them or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so that human element is kind of gone there. It's really obvious as a recipient of that to kind of detect all I can think of is how chatbots are these days, chatbots on websites, in Facebook Messenger DMs and everything, where, they start oh, you think you're getting a DM from someone, a coachy coach or someone you know really well. You're like, oh, hello. And then they ask you, oh, how are you? And you start conversing with them. And then you don't quite answer correctly. And then the human element, our brains are so sophisticated that we could detect the offness, if you like, of certain language. But, in your case, it's just like business as usual, right? With your automation, it didn't know the difference at all.
Yeah, what is it? The Turing test. So currently AI doesn't pass the Turing test. We don't believe it's a human. We know it's a computer. In military defense land, we refer to this as the kill chain because typically, obviously there's a lot of data involved with military platforms to make decisions. They're often not completely controlled by a human. You have a lot of unmanned air vehicles and unmanned ground vehicles. You have some that are hybrid. So, there's the drone program that operates in the Middle East and whatever else, but it's still manned by ground crew. Often it's just the ground crew that take the thing off and then it flies autonomously. This is all open source information. I'm not disclosing anything here. But the thing that is in military doctrine, which is essentially the rules of how you operate your forces, is this kill chain, which is that you should always have a human in the loop. There should always be a person that makes the final decision to pull the trigger or not, to release the ordnance or whatever else. There's a whole load of stuff that you segregate, which you say, okay, to defend against someone shooting at me, I just want that to happen. Like, I don't want to have to be in the loop, because if that goes off or not, there isn't necessarily collateral damage. And there's these terms called safety involvement levels. So to sort of segregate where it is. So, for instance, your undercarriage coming up and down whilst you're coming into land, you want to be in control of that. You don't want to devolve that responsibility to a machine, because if that goes wrong, game over. Releasing a weapon, game over. But things like, put the windscreen wipers on. Yeah, okay, whatever. You crack on. I'll have my auto wipers or whatever else. And I guess where I'm heading is that we in the commercial world, when we're dealing with these like little business operations, we kind of go, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Well, someone turns up and leaves you a 1-star review. Is that worth it to me? Yes, absolutely, actually. I'm happy that my user feedback is from someone going, there's a 1-star review. I'm okay with that. That's an acceptable loss to me. Not great. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but yeah, the tens of hours that I've got back from all the times it's worked makes it worthwhile. It's not irrecoverable. It's not something I can recover from.
Oh, okay. This is really interesting then. So you're saying like there is going to be, to use your language, collateral damage, right? When it comes to like some automations, but it's worth it when you think about the time that you save. Because I'm so ingrained throughout my career and in the businesses that I run at the moment to be so customer focused, right? That for me, one review like that would have devastated me. I wouldn't have just planted a tree. I'd be sending like a bouquet to his mother or something,
One review might be enough to, like, if you only have 2 customers a year and one of them says you're a dickhead, then that might not be an acceptable loss. But 1 in 1,000, I'm kind of okay with,
Yeah, well, I guess when it gets to the volume. But you were just talking a minute ago about the certain tasks that need to have a human's eyes on them, right?
Yes.
And I do believe like calendar scheduling is one of those things that should have a slight human touch in there somewhere at some point. Like you can automate it for sure, but if it's purely automated and you're not having a real conversation with someone in the follow-up, that feels a bit like weird. You could potentially just automate all of the follow-up. You could send a questionnaire, you could send an email series that followed up, but it wouldn't be tailored and nuanced to the conversation that you had with that person. So at some point you have to insert yourself into that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's got to be by design. So absolutely, I wouldn't for a moment suggest that I want to be one of those AHs that just automates the hell out of everything, because that's not very helpful. And I think anyone that I've worked with would attest the fact that I'll give you all the time in the world. But what I do want to make sure is those things that are sort of low down on the benefit to me, like someone leaving a Google review, like quite a good thing, good for social proof, whatever. But no, I'm not going to manually go, hey, by the way, would you mind leaving a review? Because that time, if I'm gonna give that 5-10 minutes, that's better spent saying, well, let's just have a phone call and talk, because what people want is like you say, the organic. So I don't think of it as trying to automate the value you can give. I think about optimizing you so that you can give the as much time as possible with the most value, and then all the stuff that's lower value, forget about. So very practically, just to explain how I operate my calendar, I have my time blocked out for the most important things. And let's just be really clear, that's not because other people are less important. It is true if you were to rank them, yes, they're less important than these other things. But the reason that you set your calendar up in that way is so that you can best serve other people. And to do that, for instance, me having breakfast and drinking, that's a more important thing. If I look after me for you and you look after you for me, everyone's going to have a better time. But if I start compromising my ability to serve someone by not protecting time to do, to build a sustainable business that can serve someone, then ultimately it's a very short-term gain that someone might get me for the time that is best suited for them at that moment. But in a year, 2 years' time, I might not be in business, is worst case scenario, because I've been burning out and not protecting the time. So I think there's a balance, and it's not completely scientific.
I feel like this is a really good point to tell you about something I've been doing all week then, because I've been doing this mini course by Mike Michalowicz and Adrian Dorinson. They head up the Clockwork Your Business program. Mike even wrote a book called Clockwork. He's the guy who wrote Profit First, right? So I'm already like in the church at the sermon, loving him and everything. Kind of whole thing behind what they're trying to do is help businesses understand what they're spending time on, what their time is worth, and then how to delegate out tasks that aren't driving you towards the bigger goal that you've got for your business, predominantly like making money, right? They have this phrase called the queen bee role, and you have to find the thing that you as a business owner must be protected so that you can do it to make your business money in a way that a hive will protect the queen bee in order to ensure that the hive continues, right? If you don't protect the queen and what she's doing, making all the babies, doing all the things, then the hive will die out, right? So you have to kind of look at your own business in the same way. I've been doing this week because it's very obvious in my business that I'm doing lots of things and burning out, but they're not things that perhaps are queen bee related, right? But I feel very busy and very accomplished, right? Even though I've got a lot of like automations going on in my business, and there are things, I've got Calendly links, Sam Jackson. I've got automations running in my business. I even employ someone who does my invoicing for me, and she chases invoices as well, because you do need a human element with that in an agency business as well. I have people in my team who help me with stuff, but there I am. I'm there like scheduling social posts. And what other non-important things have I been doing? Setting up ads in the ads manager. Like I'm a junior Facebook ads person, scheduling my own emails and putting those into ConvertKit, sat doing Slack admin and, setting up and doing like little chat things in Slack, like all these things that when you kind of zoom out and look at what I've spent my time on in my business, I probably feel like, oh, that's really good. I got 20 things done today. But are they the things that specifically made me or could make me money? No. So I'm so guilty of that at the moment.
How do you combat that then? So that's the situation you don't want. You don't want to be busy. So how do you be? Let's change this from high velocity, like you're moving through stuff, to high impact, like you want to move possibly a little bit slower, but you want the end result to be bigger. So rather than moving really fast and a long way, you just want to have a bigger impact when you land.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's a mix of a couple of things. I've known this anyway, but it's been really good going through the process again this past week and getting reminded, because remember, optimization is a process. It's always happening. You've got to learn self-awareness about the things that you're working on. And you also have to learn how to delegate those things to others or to a system. Like, if you are setting up your own calendar appointments, having the knowledge and the confidence to kind of set up a system like Calendly or whatever. So I've been doing an inventory of all the tasks that I'm spending my time on. And we've been running out in preparation for this time tracking within the agency. And I know, like, when we spoke last episode, like, we were talking about like how tracking your time in your business isn't always good, but we're only doing it for this short while so we can all get an awareness of what we've been spending our time on. And I'm trying to like focus on the time that I've been spending on doing tasks, the time that I've spent delegating tasks, the time I've been spending making decisions, and then the time I've been spending doing queen bee big thinking for the business, right?
Sure.
And I don't delegate enough. I do a very quick risk analysis with a task. I'm like, I could just do it myself, and then I don't have to spend the time delegating this to you. And I think that's where my issue has been coming in, is when I've been thinking in my business recently of how do I save more time, I've assumed doing something myself would save more time. And actually what I need to go through is a process of investing some of that time into showing others how to do something properly.
Yeah, so I think for clarity, just backing up a little bit, you were saying about measuring your time and time tracking. And the other week when we were talking about it, perhaps that was the impression that we gave. So I just want to give some clarity around it. I think charging by the hour is a hide into nothing. You want to charge for results. But if you want to measure current state to improve it, then you have to know how much time you're spending. I don't think that's a misnomer. And if you are recognizing the cost of a task to you, because the cost is still time, your internal cost is time. You just don't want to pass the time cost on. You want to pass on a money cost and disassociate that from the time when you're giving it to the customer. There is an overhead to optimizing initially, because when you delegate something, as you are doing, I guess you not only have to teach and write a process for someone else, but you also have to create a new role for yourself, which is to quality check that, to assure that task you've delegated. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about, isn't it? Is going from scaling, essentially from a few $100,000 to a couple of million in agency type work. That's the job, is you've got to create a new job for yourself where you're managing as opposed to doing, and you've got to build all that system as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not just the managing and the delegating, it's the empowering. Like, how do you optimize your delegation so that people don't keep coming back to you for validation again and again? How do you ensure that ownership is taken of the tasks that you're delegating? And there's an understanding about what the outcome of that task should be as well, because potentially you could be really good at delegating, but if your team member keeps coming back to you again and again and saying, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Actually, you're going to be spending double the time. And that's what leads us as business owners to thinking, do you know what? I'll just do it myself. I'll just do it myself. And so I'm having to go through an uncomfortable period at the moment of understanding where I haven't been setting expectations when I've been delegating, and also being okay with the result that comes back not being what was in my head, but being good enough.
Yeah. I want to ask you some questions about how you're getting on with it. I have a friend, Daya, who runs a company, the Digital Business Manager Bootcamp. And I think it'd be fair to say what Daya does is trains up virtual assistants to take on more than their role. And it's somewhere between a chief operations officer and a digital business assistant. She trains these digital business managers, and she has this cracking metaphor for what you're describing. She says, if you can imagine a posh party, everyone's in tuxedos and nice dresses, the kind of party I would never get invited to. And at this party, we've got some very kind waiters, waitresses with trays of drinks. And there's lots of nice drinks of champagne on this tray. And most people, when they think about delegation and where they start is, well, I'm going to pay someone to take a drink and give it to another person. And then I'm going to get them to repeat that process. So they keep coming back to the tray, taking a drink and handing it out. And that's great because you now no longer have to hand out each of these individual drinks. But the next stage is actually to say, well, no, you hold this tray and make sure all these drinks get distributed. And then when the tray gets empty, go and fill the tray up again and know how to do all that. And that's the difference, like you were saying, about ownership versus delegation. To empower someone, you need to tell them what the tray is all about and tell them the principle. I don't just want to instruct you to give a drink to that person that doesn't have a drink. I actually want you to recognize the purpose of this tray holding role is to scan the room, identify who hasn't got a drink, identify who needs a drink, make sure that you're moving around the room. And it's not something that you can give a paint by numbers approach to. You can only share the principles with them. Now, a practical approach to this, there's a brilliant business called Strategic Coach. They have a free online template, which I highly recommend, called the Impact Filter. And this gentleman has written a bazillion books, real number, no, lots of books, except he hasn't written them. He's outsourced the writing of them and added little chapters in. And he outsources his entire business by writing this Impact Filter, which is one side of A4. And the one side of A4 has some very, very specific fields on there. You identify the project that you're talking about, the purpose of this project. So what do you want to accomplish? What's your motivation? The importance of the project. So what difference will this make to you and the business? What impact will this have on you and the business? What the ideal outcome looks like. So when this project is complete, what does the completed project look like? What's the payoff? And then there's this little bit on selling it to yourself. So what's the best possible result that you will get from this project? What's the worst possible result? And then he just has a list of 8. He says, right, so what's the success criteria? What specific results will be true once this project is complete? And that's what he uses to delegate and empower and give responsibility to other people. I found this works really, really well, and I've used it to hand over an entire company before. That's how useful it is. Having signposted that resource, Vicky, I'm curious. This week, what have you found works and doesn't work? I mean, how has Mike Michalowicz's book and the course that you've done, how has that worked in practice?
Okay, well, you know what? We're a remote team. And what has come to light is that we're just not talking enough. So there's no feedback loops happening. So if something's getting delegated and then getting done, and maybe not getting done the way I would hope, it's because I haven't set the expectations and then I haven't provided the feedback. And that's kind of hard to take on, because I always feel like the responsibility stops with the person delegate. I've always felt like that. They're like, it stops with the boss, right? Whoever's leading, whoever's assigning the task, because computers don't break. It's the computer programmers who put the code into them that create that, right? So yeah, I say software doesn't break. It's the programmers programming incorrectly that makes them break, right? So I've had to, get a bit of tough love this week. I've had to take on a bit of tough love. And I've set up physical co-working. So now, we can. All our kids have gone back to school because most of my team have got kids like me. We're going to meet up in person and sit and work together so that there's no nuances lost and we can see the reactions on our faces and we can fill in the gaps about things. And I'm really hoping that loads can be learned in just a few hours of co-working than perhaps over the past few months. And we've decided to do an end of day stand-up so that there's a feedback loop happening, as opposed to, we used to do a morning stand-up, which it just wasn't useful because no one knew what they were meant to be doing for the day. But if we put one at the end of the day and talk about what our wins and our losses and what we're working on tomorrow, that then gives me the evening to figure out, okay, how do I help people for the next day? And I have no idea why we weren't doing end of the day feedback loops before, but we are now. And then the kind of biggest takeaway has been the realization about how much my time is worth. And, that kind of figure has always floated roughly in my head, but to actually figure it out this week. A great example is a task that I love doing where it's finding ads that other people are running and pulling them into a sheet and sharing the links with clients, right? I love doing that because it's a research task, but it's not worth the amount that I'm worth in the business per hour. Like one of the team could go do this. And in the process of doing that task, they could learn more about what's going on in the industry right now and what ads look good and what ads don't. And I'm taking that away from them because that's a fun task for me. And then I'll add one more massive takeaway, which is I don't think I've given people permission enough to take on their role in that process as well. So I've been physically saying, you can talk to the client, you can put this live, you can do this if you follow this step, this step, this step. And that stopped the coming back going, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Quite a few times already this week since implementing it. It's a work in progress, Sam, so we'll see what happens. But the idea was just to bring a bit more connection back into the business. I think it's in a remote business, it's been very easy for everyone to do their work in silos, and it's conceptual. Your name pops up on Slack. You work with remote teams, you know what this is like. Sometimes the only connection you might have with other people is their name popping up in Slack or on DMs or whatever. And that's very different to the type of in-person office that, I've been used to in the past, where you feel like there was probably a lot of wasted time with taps on the shoulder and long lunch breaks and things like that. But it's very possible more got done because you could fill in the gaps of communication that you can't fill in with Slack, the look on someone's face,
I would guess, and I bet the data would support this as well, but who knows really, is that the benefit of offices to team working was not that more that was getting done. Be almost certain that less got done. I think the right things, the better decisions were made, and so the right things were getting done. The best way for an individual to complete a task is without any distractions, with 100% focus. I mean, I don't think there's any dispute in that. But the question is around the decisions, is that good enough? Is that the right task? Do they have the right inputs and outputs? And those are the decisions that happen in an office. And I think in that kind of environment, it's not a democracy as so many people believe jobs are, where, everyone's equal. There's someone in charge. It's a monarchy. And ultimately, the reason offices work is a person with, I'm going to say, alpha type traits and I don't mean that they're oppressive and aggressive and tell people. I mean, no, they're clearly in charge and they get to call the shots. That's what happens in an office is, yeah, I'm glad you've got an opinion, but I make the decision and they drive the direction. Whereas when everyone's remote, it's quite difficult to assert that sort of leadership. And I do think there's a whole world now where remote leadership is a thing. Remote guidance is a thing. And unfortunately, it's, got quite litigious and working on contracts, and it's quite difficult. There are challenges, let's say. There are challenges. And I know, like I've said, a lot of big organizations are just going, just bring everyone back to the office. That's the only way we're going to deliver on our contracts.
Well, the challenges you mentioned is because companies don't know if people are sat there during office hours working on the things they're meant to, right? So this is the rise of...
No way they are. But I'm not, that's... no, that's also not a bad thing. It's the company's responsibility, in my opinion.
Yeah, but this is going back to what we were saying previously, though. It's like when time is measured versus the outcome,
Yeah.
And as long as the outcome happens, it doesn't matter if someone's not sat in front of their desk. But
For sure.
I think the challenge for me, from a remote point of view, is more without having to get on Zoom, basically, and, get on camera and just talk it through, is how do you give someone enough information that they can feel empowered enough to go ahead and do that task? When you're in person together in an office, you can answer all their questions on the spot. You can read their face to see, how they feel. You still can't do that with Zoom, because you're often looking at yourself on Zoom. There's body language cues that you're missing. The kids come in, the cat jumps up, whatever it might be. It's not the same as being in person. And I think that's a really good point. Like, it's the decision making, it's the brainstorming, it's the thinking bit in a communal setting that's missing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's direction. I'm convinced that optimization ultimately comes down to good leadership. I've got a couple of questions that I want to ask you, actually. A very simple way to start delegating tasks is to write down the title of the task, maybe a little text description. So fire up a Google Sheet, type in your URL, sheets.new. I'll bring up a new Google Sheet for you. Write down the title of the task. And then next time you do that task, download a completely free application called tango.us. and that will screen record everything you do in the browser. I think it now works natively on your desktop, but certainly it works for web applications. And it records every click, every movement, everything you do in the browser. And after you've completed the task, you press stop. And what you're left with is, I'm going to call it a standard operating procedure that says, okay, go to website www.google.com and type in facebook.com. Navigate to Facebook, search for ads for whatever, copy and paste ads into this spreadsheet, and it's all there. And there are nice little video clips of every movement, so you can see the instructions in context. And then the other thing that you can do is use Loom. Again, it's free for 5 minutes, just to explain and give context. Now, I say this firsthand. I helped someone move a whole team overseas for their entire business, and we just listed every activity that the native UK team was doing. And for every single activity, we had this standard operating procedure, this Tango thing, and Loom, and then we used a task management system to delegate these tasks. But that became sort of their knowledge base, their hub, and it was a very quick and dirty way of creating that knowledge base. So that aside, you mentioned about the value of your time, how much an hour is worth. Now, you don't have to disclose actual figures, but I am curious, roughly how many hours a week are you putting in? Let's say your time is £300-400 an hour. I suspect it's up around that. 10 hours a day, about £5,000 a day, 20 grand a week ish. Like, what percentage, forget what the actual figures are, but as a percentage of the value of your time, how much of that is actually being bought in revenue for the time you're spending? So if your time is worth 20 grand a week and you're bringing in £5,000 a week, what's the percentage split on your productivity versus what your time is worth? Can you calculate that? Am I being clear with the question?
No. So are you saying like how much of my time I've spent on money generating activities?
Yes. If you've got 40 hours a week and you're spending 10 of them and they're bringing in money, but you're doing other stuff for 30 hours and there's no money coming in. Do you have any idea what that split is?
Yeah, I can't even confess this out loud because like the queen bee activity, if you like, just to go back to the clockwork phraseology, right, is the thing that I should 100% be doing is sales and strategy, right? That is only I can do this in the business, right? Only I can sell at the moment because we don't have a sales director. That's me. I'm like the sales director. And the strategy that we give to our clients, that is me as well. Like they buy into that. At some point, and I'm starting to document it at the moment, we'll have playbooks, right? And the team can start running them out. Like we've got a playbook for running a 5-day challenge, for running a webinar, for running product business ads and stuff like that. So that's slowly happening, but I still need to see that at the top. And I'm spending, I don't know, maybe I just, again, it's hard to say it out loud, maybe like 10 to 20% on those things. The rest of the time I'm either like doing or I'm delegating or there's lots of admin, and it's been a bit of a wake up call. I used to work for someone, right, who would, like, MD of our agency. He also ran other businesses as well, sat on the board of multiple businesses. He would get the plunger out and go and unblock the toilet in the office when we needed. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was that
literally dealing with tasks.
yeah, like literally. Like, I remember when I first started working for this business, and he had a second home that he was renting out at the time, and he would go and do the maintenance. And I remember thinking, like, this is insane. What, are you like the MD here or whatever? Like, he'd have like the tenants ringing up going, oh, we need like a new light or whatever. And he'd like go negotiate that. And I said to him, like, why aren't you using a property agency? Like, why are you not doing that? So I feel like I've been around that, you have to sort of muck in and do everything kind of vibe. And that is not an optimized business. And the reason why it's not an optimized business, and I'm aware of this, and just to talk about like actions and everything, is because I probably feel very accomplished that I'm doing lots of tasks. Great, well done, pat on the back, everything. Very tired at the end of the day. There ain't no 4-hour work week happening here. Sam Jacks, just to quote your fave there. That is not happening here.
The Bible.
The Bible, yeah. It's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable at all.
No. I feel like you're in the middle of the process, and this is going to be great because it makes for some good content for us. Let's switch gears then and say, okay, so greenfield, blank slate, how do we start an optimized business? Greenfield site. And I guess this is probably most useful for if you are thinking of starting a side hustle, if you're thinking of starting a new project, less so if you're trying to optimize something. I mean, we're going to try and head towards a goal here. What does it look like? And I kind of want to highlight something that you said. If you're in your own business and you've got a thing to sell, like we've said that optimization is time for money. You have to do some upfront work usually to sell your time. So let's say you want to earn £1,000 a day and you're willing to work 8 hours a day. I would wager that you want to be spending about 50% of your time, about 4 hours a day, on marketing, advertising, pitching, quoting, proposing deals to people and trying to get those customers, and then probably about 4 hours of the day delivering that. It doesn't really matter whether those numbers are accurate or right. The principle's still the same. If you want to earn £1,000 a day, you're looking at selling your 4 hours for £250 an hour. It's just a really important mindset thing that whatever service you can deliver in 4 hours is worth £1,000. And I highlight this because so often people look externally at people that run their own business and go, well, they just charged me X hundreds of pounds to do this job, and it only took them half an hour. But what you don't get to appreciate is, they spent the day before organising all their tools, buying new tools, sorting the insurance out, getting the accreditations, getting qualifications, sorting out all the non-value added stuff, getting all the materials to turn up to be able to execute the work in that half an hour space. And in that same vein, you going into your optimized business have to recognize that you're not productive 100% of the time, but the goal is to be productive for as much of that time as possible. I just want to highlight that as sort of our table stakes going into it. How do you think of it? When you think of the gold standard of an optimized business, what does that look like in your mind's eye?
Yeah, exactly that. It's like the best people are doing the best jobs to drive the business forward and make money, so that there is no extraneous activity, there's no layers of management that don't need to happen. This is why startups have always appealed to me massively, because you'd have the right people for the exact jobs that needed to happen to bring a product to life. That love of that world, as we've discussed, has never gone away, and that's great. It's just when you have to do the scaling piece, that beautiful beginning can't remain. Like, you can't have 4 guys sat there coding for 18 hours a day anymore. You have to find a way that the best people can do the right jobs moving forward, which is quite a lot of the time with those startups that have become much bigger. The people who were coding don't code anymore. Or, there might be someone who's got a finance background, but they've ended up getting into HR. I knew a lot of the C-level people at Brandwatch when I worked there who seemed to have skills in other things that led them to kind of getting to their seat at the table. It's finding not just what your purpose is, but what the right purpose is for you and your place in the business. And that feels to me like what an idealistic, optimized business is. And so then when you're doing the tasks, you're really happy. And tasks is the wrong word. When you're doing the job, when you're driving the business forward, you're doing the thing that you enjoy, that is not, you're going to feel like you want to do the work. It's not painful to have to do the work. And in a way, that's going to provide a better experience to the people receiving the products or the services.
Yeah, for sure.
So that seems to me like the Valhalla, really, which is why culture is so important in business. You hear it coming up again and again. And, you see it trending on LinkedIn. Culture helps drive a business forward to being a happy business. And a happy business is one that's running beautifully, well optimized. People want to be there. They want to do a good job. They go out of their way to find better ways to deliver the products and services for their customers.
If I can kind of just abstract what you're saying a little bit. So culture really is ultimately a definition of values, or a definition of what good looks like, the outcome you're looking for. Because I think it's very well and good to look at situations where an outcome looks really good and go, oh, that's how to do it. It's like, no, they just achieved an outcome that looks good. That might not be your outcome. For instance, this guy, this Indian fella, Amit Agarwal, I think his name is, one person business. He's a software engineer, makes Google plugins for Google Sheets, Gmail, and that kind of thing. And he's doing £15 million a year.
Yeah, I know him.
He was featured on My First Million.
One man business, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people will look at that and go, £15 million a year. Oh my God, that's amazing. Well, maybe not. Like £15 million a year does sound really good. But if he's divorced, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting divorced. Sometimes that's the right decision. But if he's divorced, unhappy, estranged from his children, his family hate him, no friends, and he's worked 100 hours a week, and he's miserable, then, £15 million isn't going to keep you warm at night. And it's really, going back to the Bible, 4-hour work week, it's around this definition of what you want. You don't want to play by someone else's rules. You want to define your own rules for success. So if you are a parent and you only want to work between 9 and 3 and you want to spend an hour in the gym each day and then have an hour at lunch, then, whatever that is, 6 hours, you've got 4 hours there a day to work. And that's your table stakes. And it's really about just understanding those boundaries and then optimizing your business for it. For instance, a friend, business partner, and I are starting a media company, and the goal is to make it worth £20 million. And we're only going to put 2 hours of effort in a week. And anything that has to happen beyond those 2 hours, we're employing people to do. Like, they're our table stakes. Because we're going, we like starting businesses, we like owning businesses, but we don't want to work 100 hours a week. That's not the goal. Like, the goal is to live an awesome life and to have great fun. And yeah, building product is great and helping people is great, but spending all your time doing anything, that the poison's in the dose, isn't fun. Like, I love developing and designing products as much as the next person. I also love just playing with Lego with my son on the floor in the lounge, but I couldn't do either of those things for an entire week. Like, neither of those would then be fun. And so really, I guess what I want to emphasize is it's about deciding what the parameters are for optimization. Like, what are you optimizing for? And really, just to get back to it, money is essentially stored time. And the first thing you want to optimize for is having enough cash so that you can either unlock other people's time, like use those time chips to get other people to realize your vision, your dream, your reality, or indeed buy that time back for yourself. So stop doing stuff and offload the tasks you're doing. But yeah, I think this is probably a bigger discussion than we've got time for, but I just wanted to kind of tease that out a little bit, that it's not completely black and white about what success looks like.
Yeah, and such a good point to keep coming back to again and again is that there has to be a why behind your business. There has to be a why behind the optimization that you do as well. And generating more money is so that you can have a nicer life, feel secure, have a future, look after kids, have kids, whatever, right? Have a big holiday property, drive a nice car, whatever it is, right? Or it's that you have bought yourself the time to go and do that mountain biking thing you've always wanted to do, or sail around the world. I think it's fair to say that most people fall into one of those two camps, really. It's like more time to do things or more money to buy things.
What, they either want a mountain bike or sail?
I couldn't imagine anything worse. If it was me, if I had enough money to go, you know what, this is great. If I was a fat fire, right, I would make music. That's what I would do. I'd kit myself out with an amazing studio, just make beats all day, hang out with my kids making beats. That would be fun.
Why is that not the business you're in now? Why are you not doing that now?
Because I have always had a firm belief that as soon as you start monetizing some things, it doesn't become fun. So there's, with making music, there's no pressure to only make the music that sells or that the market likes. There's no pressure to have to churn something out quickly because that's what people want, or worry about having to, to pay the rent or whatever. So, it's a pure artistic endeavor where I've got as long to take on something as I want to take, really. So I think that's probably what I would do. What would you do?
Probably what I'm doing now. In fact, definitely what I'm doing now. I love what I do.
You would still run a business if you had loads of money?
Yeah, 100%. And I would build more businesses. What would change for me is if I had more money, I would employ more talented people to head up some of the businesses that I'm working on. So rather than bootstrap them and get them off the ground and me be ultimately the buck stopping with me, I would employ, I'm going to say business managers, CEOs, probably presidents earlier on, kind of like startup studio type thing. And the only reason I would do that is because I would love to be spending 3-4 hours a day working out, doing physical activities. Let's just say doing physical activities, not necessarily.
That's what we're getting to here, right? Because I'm like, I just want to pursue the arts. And of course, I'd love to continue like overseeing businesses and investing and stuff like that. But you're like, no, I'm just all business. But I'd work out for 4 hours a day.
Well, that's the thing is like at the moment I work probably like 50 or 60 hours a week, and that's I'm going to say at the moment probably like an 80-20 split between 20% is stuff that is bringing in the money now, 80% is startups, new businesses, new initiatives, and that's probably about how it's set up. I guess what I'm saying is I would still do the 20%, but the 80% I would still want all those same things to happen, but I think it could be done more efficiently if I had the money. So maybe I would do 30 hours a week and I would spend 10 hours a week working out, and I would just subcontract that way. But I wouldn't want to change the things I'm doing. Like I don't think my life would materially change much. Maybe I'll buy a bigger house, but I'd definitely do a few things. I would have a chef. I would be that guy. I would definitely get a driver. Mostly because it's cool. Like I wouldn't change my office. My office is in like a rough area relatively. I would just turn up in a Rolls Royce and be hated.
So you'd need to employ security to stand next to said Rolls Royce as well then?
Yeah, well, the driver would be security, yeah. I know a former Iranian soldier. He would be the driver.
I don't think my material life would change that much either. I've always lived quite a minimalist life anyway. So I feel like I would rattle around in a massive house. Like, absolutely.
I definitely save more money. I wouldn't want more to spend necessarily. I think probably business endeavor wise, I'd like to do a lot more around businesses that are not focused on financial outcome. So there's a lot of businesses focused up on carbon reduction, providing homes, fuel, like these things. They don't have solid economic models that make them worthwhile at the moment. Definitely like to do some R&D in that area, but it would still be engineering, it would still be tech, it would still be the same type of businesses. And that reason why, like my motivation is the same reason that I plant the trees, is because I fundamentally feel a responsibility to make the world better for my son and for his generation, because I think he's not capable and won't be capable for another 20 years of doing anything about the state of the world, the state of the wars, the state of our political system, the state of our economic system. Like it's a bit of a mess. We are not, in my opinion, the Great Britain, the world superpower that we once were. And it makes me seriously sad. And that's what I feel a responsibility to. That's what motivates me. And the reason for wanting to work out is so that I can physically outwork other people. I can be better.
So don't forget to like this video if you really enjoyed it. Obviously, come and subscribe to this YouTube channel and go and share it with everyone in the world. Your mum, your uncle, the person who comes around and waters your plants. Like literally, let's help us get this podcast out there into the world and get businesses optimizing.
Yeah, comment below on YouTube. Let us know what you think. We'd love to get some feedback. Even if you just comment and say, I listened, that would be great. You can follow me on Twitter at SamJax. And if you want to be a part of my 50,000 follower in 90-day challenge, jump in. It's all completely free. You can see how it is going or not at the moment. And if you want to follow Vicky, you can head over to
Hey Vicky Jakes. Just Google me. I'm everywhere. I'm really annoying.
Just Google you.
Yeah. Like there's no one else in the UK with my name. There's like one other person in the world and she's in America and she got the Hotmail first all those years ago. So Yeah.